Hello, and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. Thank you for joining us. Excited to welcome back our guest tonight, our good friend from dailyrollcall.com, Cathy Hinners. Cathy is here to talk to us about the Muslim Brotherhood threat right here in our own backyard. She has a lot of important information to share with us, so don't go away. But first, if you have an announcement from a conservative organization that you'd like to broadcast on this show, please send information to tninformer.tv@gmail.com the Friday before the show. If you want our state to stand up to the federal overreach, the best way to do this is support the nullification bill sponsored by Senator Bowling and Representative Halsey that they intend to bring back this session. Visit tncss.weebly.com/call to action and sign the petition and follow the instructions on the link. Our state senators and reps need to know that we want this legislation passed when they return in January. Now is also the time to get candidates for state office on record as well. DC will never fix DC. Only the states can fix DC, and we have to demand that they do that. We have to demand that they stand up to uphold the Constitution of the United States and our state constitution. The Maury County Reagan Day event will be Friday, June 14th, 6 p.m. at the Puckett's Restaurant in Columbia, Tennessee. Guests include Todd Starnes, Representative Andy Ogles, Representative Tim Burchett, Tony Lauren. Tickets are $100 per. Visit the murraytngop.com for more details. The Stewart and Henry County chapter of the TFA will meet this Thursday, 7 p.m. at the VFW in Paris, Tennessee, located at 2512 East Wood Street. Start time is at 7 p.m. The speaker will be West Tennessee TFA Director Richard Archie. If you haven't heard Richard speak before, you'll want to be there. If you want to know more about what is really going on in our country, including information you won't get anywhere else, I recommend Brian O'Shea. He's a career intelligence analyst and investigator, and as an investigative journalist. You can visit his Substack, and his link will take you to other things he does, to include unrestricted invasion. He goes in depth on the current invasion of our country, the current Fed-led invasion at our border. And he's got a lot of information on his Substack. It's brianocshea.substack.com. Little disclaimer here, I'm still having some vision issues, so I may take a little while to get things across every now and then, so I apologize for that. Now to our guest, Cathy Hinners. Cathy is a retired police officer from Albany, New York, and a former law enforcement instructor. She's also a subcontract instructor with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, where part of her class instruction was on WMD and bomb recognition. Cathy is author of the book, The Muslim Brotherhood, The Threat in Our Backyard. She's a blogger and podcaster on dailyrollcall.com. Cathy, thank you for being with us tonight. I really appreciate you coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Well,
we always have a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, well, you always have a lot of good information, and I'm looking forward to it. The threat in our backyard in Tennessee has only grown over the years. And of course, it's made worse by what's going on our border now. We have a full-scale invasion. We were talking before the show, we have all these unaccounted for Afghanis, plus who knows who else is coming across our border. Different Muslim Brotherhood organizations, Hamas, whoever. And we really don't know. So what updates do you have for us?
Well, on who's crossing the border, we just learned today that apparently the Department of Homeland Security has kind of failed at their job, what they were supposed to do originally back in 2021 when we had 97 Afghan evacuees enter the United States. 77,000 of those were paroled into our country. And it was supposed to be for 2 years, which was renewable, despite the fact that there were, lots of security concerns.
It's contagious.
Unvetted Afghans. When I talk about vetting these Afghans, the vetting system really wasn't in place for that many to be, brought into the United States. There's a problem with the vetting process, the way we do these refugees and, illegals and things anyway. But anyway, so 77,000 were paroled, and we learned today that they basically have given up as to where they are. They're not being monitored. DHS, Customs, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services all kind of threw their hands up and said it wasn't their job to do that. So this is another glaring, effect of Mayorkas and the Biden administration losing, if you will, 77,000 paroled Afghanis. Maybe they haven't lost them all, but when they're not being monitored or certainly looked into, or having their parole status renewed, or any enforcement of any violations that they may have had, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So
whose job is it if it's not their job?
Apparently, it's nobody's. It's really absurd that we've even had to think about who's watching these people at this point. But we do know back in 2021 when they came, Nashville, the city of Nashville, took on about 600 of those Afghan evacuees. So whether or not they're still in Nashville, who knows? We don't know anything about them. So that's today's good news. So some more good news, what I wanted to talk about is we all know, that we're having these protests, and there's all these Students for Justice in Palestine and all these different organizations that are, protesting every weekend or every day in some of the larger cities about, what's happening between Israel and Hamas. And I think what I thought about was most people don't even really know who these people are. Who are they supporting? Who are they protesting for? They like to say that the Palestinians are, being killed in this genocide by Israel, regardless of the fact that basically who started this problem. But I think one of the big thing is, and you look back to 2006, when the elections were first held back in Gaza and the West Bank, it was held between the Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas. And in a seismic shift to the Palestinian Authority, the Hamas won 76 seats compared to the Fatah's 43. So obviously Hamas had a large contingency of people that voted for them to be in power. And I'm not saying they have like a democracy like we do where, every vote counts and things. Right. So, depending on how their voting system was at the time, Hamas did make it and still is in charge of a lot of areas. The current political, situation, obviously, is who's running the Palestine territories is still to be determined. Everything is kind of up in the air there as to who's doing what. But Hamas, the militant Hamas, has always had a position there since 2006. So I don't think people are understanding who Hamas actually is. And if they understood that, I would find it difficult to believe that they still would be out there in the protest line, supporting this Hamas. I think they need to understand that Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. It is a militant branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so if anybody's interested, I would suggest reading the original Hamas charter from 1988. There since has been in 2017, I think they tried to make the charter a little less radical, if you will. But the original one is still there. And also then go read the Muslim Brotherhood Manifesto. You and I have gone over that 100 times. Right. And one of the things that the Muslim Brotherhood Manifesto says, and this is why people need to understand what they're doing. And I'll just read a part of this. And this is in their manifesto, that the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process, what all the word means. The Ikhwan, or the Muslim Brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that is it eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. So within that paragraph, there's two things they're telling you. They're coming from within, and their religion will be victorious over all other religions. So much for our First Amendment. Right. But that is a problem. So, that is one thing that I want people to understand that this particular paragraph that has come out of the manifesto, the Muslim Brotherhood Manifesto, has evidentiary value. You know, we've talked about it before. Back in, I think it was 1988, first started the Holy Land Foundation trial in Texas. And this whole manifesto was part of the evidence that helped indict Hamas members here in America of 109 different crimes.
Right.
So it does have evidentiary value, and it is a valuable document. And if we took it seriously, we'd understand what their plan was.
And I think that was exposed back when we actually had an FBI that had at least some interest in protecting us and calling out the bad guys. And I think it was 2007, 2008 was the Holy Land trial, and Hamas was an unindicted co-conspirator. Hamas / CARE.
Yes.
And of course, CARE is pretty much Hamas in the U.S. I think we have did you want to go to the little video clip now that we?
Yeah. Yes, please do.
Okay. And in this clip, I think it's not. Okay.
Mr. Hampton, allow me to disagree with you just to clarify some things. I used to support the PLO, and I used to be the president of the General Union of Palestine Students, which is part of the PLO here in the United States. But after I researched the situation inside Palestine and outside, I'm in support of the Hamas movement more than the PLO.
He took some of the other guests there by surprise. I believe that was Waleed Faris on the left there, and the look on his face. But that was a gentleman, and I use that word loosely, Nihad Awad, who is the executive director of CARE, which is the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is Hamas in America. And the reason we're talking about him real quick is because he has played a pretty good role of the formation of the Murfreesboro Mosque. He has been to that mosque on several occasions. He's been to Tennessee on several occasions, but he has been an informant, if you will, as to how to set up the mosques. Interesting thing about the mosques and the Islamic centers in Tennessee, and actually in the United States, the majority of them are owned and operated by a Muslim Brotherhood organization called the North American Islamic Trust. And so he was here helping, at the time it was Selah Spinetti, who used to be a household name in Murfreesboro, who at the time was the head of the mosque. And so he's been here on various occasions, which is important because even though we don't have a CARE chapter in this state, we do have a proxy, if you will. It's called the American Muslim Advisory Council, which is located in Nashville. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. But CARE is Hamas. And so the gentleman in the center there in the dark suit is Nihad Awad, and the gentleman on the right is Selah Spinetti, and that was taken at the Murfreesboro Mosque. So here we have a gentleman who has been involved in Hamas since its inception. He was helped found it. He also was, I believe, he wasn't one of the co-conspirators that was indicted, but he was involved in that. And he also is just pro-Hamas all the way. And what he was saying, if you didn't catch it in that clip, is he used to be a supporter of the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was another terrorist group. And now he was a supporter of CARE. Or Hamas, which is CARE.
Right.
So, this is just the very beginning of the influence that we have in this state by the Muslim Brotherhood. And so, people say, why should I care about that? No pun intended there, but why should you care? Because if you understand the overall agenda of every Islamic organization is the return of the Islamic State, or what they used to call the global caliphate, right, which is basically everything would follow Sharia law. And it sounds too big and too overwhelming and too impossible because we have a constitution. But when
we do?
yeah, believe it or not.
Okay.
But the Constitution is completely, well, actually, the Sharia law is completely antithetical to our Constitution.
Yep.
We should never say it will never happen, because as we look at what's happening in our own country with more Muslims being elected into our political offices,
Yep.
what is the number one way to affect change, obviously, is to become a politician. Yep. And so this is what we're seeing here. And there's something called Jetpack, which is a nonprofit organization here in this country that focuses on increasing Muslim political representation. And last year, almost 150 Muslims had ran for office, including 51 state legislative candidates across 23 states. 2022 wins surpassed the prior record of 71 wins for Muslim individuals. And that is for judgeships in different cities, Congress, and different state representatives, mostly on the state level. So if that doesn't concern you, understand that, this is something that they vow to do. If you look at Europe, specifically England, they do have Sharia compliant neighborhoods.
Yep.
And we say, well, that'll never happen here. Well, I can tell you that there was just recently a statement released from a man up in Dearborn, Michigan, who said that 4 years ago, the mayor of Detroit had said there were too many Arabs, there was too much of a problem. And this gentleman says, well, look at us now, because now we're running Detroit, we're running Dearborn Heights, and we're also running Hamtramck. So is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. And the more Muslims that are here in greater numbers, you'll see the more Muslims that will run for office and ultimately will win. Yeah. And I think that's something that's extremely nerve-wracking and something that we should be considering could happen. Never say never.
Right.
So
you mentioned England. Of course, it's gotten really bad over there, but it's also bad in France and Germany now. And France for years now. And the Muslims, they have a large population over there. They're still a minority, but they have all these no-go zones, all the areas that non-Muslims can't go in, that police won't go in unless if they go in force, and they usually choose just not to go in. So it's not like they would have to take over everything all at once. And with our open borders and with, our government, and I want to go back to Nihad Awad, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, I really don't care, the CARE/Hamas guy.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, right after 9/11, he was one of the guys standing there when the idiot in chief at that time, George Bush, he was an idiot in chief on this issue at a minimum, okay, said that the attack on 9/11, that basically this was not Islam, that Islam was a religion of peace, and that their peaceful religion had been hijacked. And Awad was one of those people that was standing there. So that's the kind of influence that they have with people, with high-level politicians. And people buy into this whole peaceful Muslim garbage. Read their doctrine. Their doctrine is not peaceful. Their doctrine is not in any way, shape, or form compatible with our Constitution. People don't realize that, and I blame our government for not teaching that. I mean, if nothing else, after 9/11, you would have thought that our military and our law enforcement everywhere would have been taught these facts.
And law enforcement, that was one of the things that I, instructed about, was who the Muslim Brotherhood is. People just don't seem to right now be concerned about it. And that's probably one of the reasons why I have not been out talking about it, because people are so overwhelmed right now with so many other issues. But while that's happening, in the background, this is happening. And so I think that it's really something that does start to need more attention. I know there's a lot of people rolling their eyes saying, oh, God, it's the last thing we need to worry about. Islam's a peaceful religion. Well, number one, as we know from our dear friend and mentor, Bill Warner, Islam is not just a religion.
Right.
The majority of it is a military way of life. And so, and the other thing that I don't think people pay attention to is that the Muslim Brotherhood actually has its own political arm here in our country. It's called the United States Council of Muslim Organizations, and they claim to be the first Muslim political party within the United States. Are they on the ballot? Are they, forming, pacts and things like that? Not openly, they're not, but they have designated themselves as the United States Council of Muslim Organizations. And so everyone should also know that the Muslim Brotherhood is a designated terrorist organization in several Middle Eastern countries, as well as other countries, but several Middle Eastern. There was Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, I believe Jordan. And I think Trump did try to bring that to the table, where he said that we should probably consider making it in this country, especially, because of who falls under their umbrella.
Right.
And I guess I like to kind of make people think about, the Muslim Brotherhood is this large umbrella, and from that comes just about every organization that you can imagine. And so, when you look at who their top organizations are, like the Muslim Student Association, which is on every college campus you can possibly imagine, including Christian universities, which is really bizarre. But it is a threat. And so, why should we take it as a threat? Look at their original motto, of the Ikhwan, or the Muslim Brotherhood. It's also called the Ikhwan. Allah is our objective, the Prophet our leader, the Quran our constitution, jihad our way, and dying in the way of Allah our highest hope. So, people hear the word jihad and they almost, it's been romanticized. It's like, oh, jihad. Jihad is war. Jihad is holy war against the infidels, which we are. As Bill Warner would say, we're the kafirs. We are we are not good people according to the Muslims. And then, dying in their way of Allah is their highest hope. There's some interesting things that you can read into that. And so it is a threat. Yeah. And so the original founder of the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928, their ultimate goal was a new Muslim state that would embrace like every Muslim and would restore the authentic Muslim way of life. So, which would be the political power, the military power, the prestige of a Muslim. It incorporates all of life. So, that should be disturbing to know that this is what their end goal is. They're very patient people. We saw after 9/11, and, you talked about how, it went after 9/11. We've also learned that the majority of Muslims are really good victims, and they master the victim status. They've turned everything around to be that. They've even turned around the war against Israel and Hamas, that they're the victims. So I find that kind of incredible. Yeah. But when you hear the term Islamic State or global caliphate, that is the goal of every Muslim, is to make a path to that, to see that someday Sharia law will be. Will it ever happen? Who knows?
But that doesn't mean they're not going to try, and that doesn't mean that there's... And a lot of people don't understand that jihad is not just strapping a bomb to yourself and blowing yourself and a bunch of other people up, or it's not even necessarily violence, okay? But it's to undermine, going back to the comments made in the Muslim Brotherhood Manifesto, to undermine and use it, so that it tells you that everything is not going to be a direct assault. Okay, they're a lot like the Chinese. They don't do everything as a direct assault, so they infiltrate and they influence. So if you're looking for a jihadist just in the in terms of violence or how they dress. No, Muslim Brotherhood, here especially in the States, usually well-dressed, well-spoken, well-educated, friendly,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean their goal is any different than the Islamist who straps a bomb to himself and goes and kills a bunch of people. Their goal is still to rule and take over. Whether they're successful ultimately or not is a whole other story, but a lot of that has to do with us recognizing the threat, and that's my concern, because they also work with the left. Remember, you have the Red-Green Alliance, and people a lot of people don't seem to understand that.
No, and that kind of, leads me into, so how does this fit into our own state as well as our own country? But we have a lot of influence of the Muslim Brotherhood in Nashville, certainly because it's, the capital. It does have a little bit more problems. Now, Memphis, Chattanooga, Knoxville, every city has its major problems. If you have a mosque in your city or an Islamic center in your city, you've got a problem, because it's run by the Muslim Brotherhood. But the influence of these organizations, it's not just in our politics though, but it's kind of interesting because it's also reached out into the faith areas. We've got these faith-based groups. Interfaith has become a huge thing, and that is a product of the Muslim Brotherhood. But taking specifically now in the political sphere in Nashville, one of the Metro members at large, her name is Zulfat Swara. She was, and I have a real problem with this, she was sworn in on a Quran when she was elected into office there a couple of years ago. I think she's on her second term there as a member at large.
We've got a picture of that.
Yeah, we do. And it was actually the Quran that was given to her for their wedding. So she's loving that. But what we need in this particular picture here, Zulfat has become very familiar with and has a good relationship with our known Jew haters. Linda Sarsour in this picture, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is a Palestinian, who is a huge Jew hater and America hater. And then there's Omar Suleiman, that's Omar Suleiman and Zulfat pictured together. She has a working relationship with these anti-American Jewish people haters. And so that makes you wonder, she's always talking about diversity and inclusion and equity and all the wonderful tolerance and things, but yet she's had these relationships with these known, radical people, congresswomen and, the others. And so you have to kind of wonder when she actually publicly states that she's been blessed to know them and considers them an inspiration. So yeah, relationships are important. We talk about connections and affiliations, but she has relationships with these people. She's been inspired by the work that they do. And so, that in itself should have people kind of stepping back saying, well, what is she doing as an elected official in our own city, in the city of Nashville? Yeah. Well, because, they're victims and they talk about tolerance and all the things people love right now, but they kind of avoid the bigger picture, which is who Linda Sarsour is. Linda Sarsour is a very dangerous person. She's head of I think it's the Arab American Association of New York. Her parents are Palestinian. She was born in Brooklyn, so she is not from Palestine, but she herself is part of the Black Lives Matter movement, the women's movement, let's see, what else has she been? Dream Defenders, the American Muslims for Palestine, the Students for Justice in Palestine. I mean, the list goes on and on with the organizations that she has either founded herself or is part of, and a very vocal part. She's vile. I mean, she just hates America. And so this is who a lot of our known people in Nashville, Zulfat and our esteemed Justin Jones,
Yeah.
Everybody should know who Justin Jones is, but, he also has a relationship with her. And, so the influence is there. And we say, well, these people have minds of their own. Well, they all kind of work together on issues. And, when you're inspired by somebody, you're going to try to carry out their work. And so this is just part of the problem. But Zulfat is a problem. She was elected, but just those connections alone. But then she was given an award by the Muslim Brotherhood's largest entity here in our country, the Islamic Society of North America. She was given, for her faith work, she was given an award by them. And then she also was the original chairman of the AMAC, the American Muslim Advisory Council, which is Tennessee's version of CARE.
She was the first chairman?
Yeah. And now it's Sabina Mohudin is who's running it now, but Zulfat was part of that in the very beginning.
Yeah. That organization's been here a good while, the AMAC.
Oh, yeah. Well, they started out as the American Center, what was it, the ACO, back when, if you remember, Judd Matheny and Bill Ketron
had
some legislation to deal with the threat of Sharia.
Anti-terrorism material support bill.
Yeah.
And they didn't want that. So they formed this, what they called at the time, the Rapid Response Team.
Yeah.
And who would fight that? Why wouldn't you want that? But they really tore that down, so that was kind of interesting. But we've got some other influential people in Nashville. We have a gentleman by the name of Dawood Abu Diab, who was the founder of the Faith and Culture Center, which has really taken off in Nashville. It is a faith-based, interfaith type organization. But what's kind of interesting about that is he hosts what's called a seat at the table every month, and bringing Jews and Christians and Muslims together. Yet he is out there.
Clarify that. That's gullible Christians and Jews together with. You have to be gullible to do anything with the Muslims.
Well, they all believe that it's all the same God, and they're whatever else they believe. But it's interesting because he was involved in the very first meeting of the political organization that I first talked about, how the Muslim Brotherhood now has a political party here, the United States Council of Muslim Organizations. He attended their very first meeting, which was just filled with top leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood from all over the place. So he was part of that. And it's still on the website, our website, dailyrollcall.com, which shows the pictures of him involved with this group. And there is a group picture that he is in with really, really some heads of Muslim Brotherhood from all over the place. So I found that to be really kind of interesting. You'd think there'd be laws about this stuff, but I guess not. But as he's wearing the keffah, he is protesting out there, for Palestine, for Hamas. And yet he has this seat at the table where all the Christians and Jews come together and proclaim to be peaceful and loving. So that's something else that I thought was interesting.
Wasn't he involved, and I may be thinking about somebody else, but in the formation of TURC, the Tennessee Immigration and Refugee Rights Coalition? Is that the same guy that had a hand in that? Yeah. That's one of the organizations up there that promotes all these bills that, promote refugees, promote illegal aliens. They oppose anything that pushes back against illegal immigration. And a lot of our legislators, even some of our Republican legislators, listen to these clowns. It just blows my mind that organization has been up there that long, has the origins it has, and some of our legislators who have been up there just as long act like they don't know it.
Legislators, do you remember when Bill Lee had his picture taken with them?
Yes. Even before matter of fact, he met with them twice before he was in office, at least once before he was elected, and then once or twice before he actually took office.
Yep, and that was kind of a difficult time for Daily Roll Call because a lot of people were very angry, that we had acquired this picture. But that was a who's who of Muslim Brotherhood issues too. You had Samar Ali,
Yep.
with her father in the Jerusalem Fund,
Yep.
and we had so many members. Zulfat was there, Sabina Moyhuden, the head of AMAC now, was there, and there was the governor of the state of Tennessee, and so we obviously exposed that because we had met with him prior to that. As a matter of fact, he shook my hand and had said that, he wanted to learn who these people were. And there he was with his, the picture with them. So, and that's still out there too. And, a lot of people were so upset that we posted that picture. And I thought, well, wait a minute.
Should be mad at him, not you.
Exactly. Go to him and ask him why he was meeting with this particular organization that we had been exposing for 6 years at the time. So, that wasn't our problem. But that is part of the problem. When you talk about they have the Muslim Day on the Hill every year, usually in March, and, they meet with the legislators and they try to get them to conform to whatever it is they're asking for that particular year. And so many of them do, and mostly Democrats, but there have been other members that we know of, that have met with them. And, for them, it's photo ops, because as soon as they can get a picture of themselves with a member of our state legislator or the governor or whoever, it's just propaganda. It's used for down the road for propaganda. But they haven't caught on to that yet. And so, they're there every year, Muslim Day on the Hill is what it's called. Yeah. And, that's interesting.
You mentioned Samar Ali, and of course, I think you said the Jerusalem Fund. Her father, of course, is a founder of, or one of the founders of the Jerusalem Fund. And one of their big deals is BDS, the boycott, divestment against Israel.
Yeah.
But that organization, her father, a lot of the people that he's has relationships with and have been part of that. I mean, we're talking about some pretty high-profile bad guys. Now, I haven't heard anything about the organization recently. As far as I know, it still exists. But it's interesting that that's in Tennessee. You've got AMAC. You've got all these other national and international connections to Islamists from across the world here, to people here in Tennessee. And then, of course, in Dover, you do have the little compound out there. It's known as, the group is known as Muslims of America, also Jamaat Fukra. And they were at one time, that organization, not per se the one in Dover, but that organization that they fall under nationally. As you know, they have a branch in New York, and they have branches in South Carolina, Georgia, you name it. But they used to be watched by the feds. I don't think the feds have watched them in a long time. And people, I live in Stewart County, and to me, people are naive about that organization. I think it was interesting when we had a local paper start up. The guy thought he wanted to go out there and talk to them and see what they were all about. And he went out there and did this glowing report on them. And I'm like, okay, can I write a counter to this? And I wrote a counter and asked some questions, some hard questions about their beliefs in Sharia and so on and so forth. And I don't know, he stopped doing anything at all about them. I guess maybe they didn't want to respond to the questions. But we have a lot of activity here in Tennessee. And people just don't seem to realize, what some of the groups that we have here.
No, I don't think people are willing, and I won't, certainly not everybody has that issue. There are a lot of people that have always supported us on Daily Roll Call in our podcast and things, and they still do support us. And so there are, numerous members of, Tennessee, citizens of Tennessee that care about this. But then there's a lot of people who are kind of on the fence, who think, well, what's the big deal? And then there's those that are totally against us, that just think that we're picking on a religion. But I think that the interesting thing is, someone asked me not long ago, How many times have I been sued by CARE? And the answer is zero. They've tried, but they can't, because when you use their own doctrine, their own writings, their own pictures, their own social media, uh, you've got them, so I've never had a problem. And, there for a while, Daily Roll Call was listed as the inner circle, CARE's inner circle, for being haters. And I always used to laugh at that, because, it's not about hate. It's about doing research to find out literally who is in your backyard. And, talking about Jamaat al-Fuqra, they are on some of the most prime properties across Tennessee. They're right by the TVA, one of the largest TVA.
Yep.
I won't get into that, but, and up in New York, I had visited several times the one up in Hancock, New York, and they sit right on what's called the Cannondale Reservoir, which is the main water supply for New York City. So they find these places. They're also situated kind of close to a nuclear plant in South Carolina. So they do have some interesting properties, but they are one of the most dangerous organizations. And nobody, like you say, the feds used to go in. And the one time when I was in the one in Hancock, New York, actually one of the women had come out to talk to me, and she wanted me to be vetted through the feds before I could enter the property. And at the time, I was still a police officer, and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. They want me to be vetted by the feds, but I was never invited back, so it didn't happen.
Imagine that.
The leader of Jamaat al-Fuqra was the one that had Daniel Pearl beheaded, from the Wall Street Journal years ago. Yep. And so, and we're talking about CARE and Hamas, who, they've killed people. And this is who we're talking, that a lot of our members of society have relationships, not just, connections to them, but they're affiliated with them. They have relationships with them. And this is what boggles my mind, that more people don't do research before you vote for somebody, or and I'm not saying because they have a different name or they're from a different country, but do your research and find out who these people are friends with, who they're inspired by, and look to see what good they're going to bring, what they're going to bring to the table here in America as a citizen of America, rather than, a citizen of a Sharia compliant neighborhood or something like that. So, you can roll your eyes all you want, but this is something that needs to be addressed. We've had it in the schools back when Common Core was a problem. We found out some of the textbooks were coming from Pearson, which is, a whole nother problem. It's from Saudi Arabia. And this is where our kids' textbooks were coming from, and the whole topic of Islam was being whitewashed.
Yeah.
So, and those things haven't gotten better. They haven't gone away. We've given in. We thought, Islam is a peaceful religion. Our kids need to learn about it. No, they don't. So.
Well, no, they do need to learn about it. They need to understand what it really is. I mean, if you're going to teach it, you teach the threat that it is. Yeah. But that's not happening. Not in any schools that I'm aware of. Back to Jamaat al-Fuqra for just a second. If I'm not mistaken, in the early 90s in Colorado, I think the feds did get involved a little bit, and then they found a lot of stuff that was very concerning, explosives and a lot of weapons. Which, hey, I'm pro Second Amendment, I got it, but some of the other issues and things that they found there were a problem. The feds basically washed their hands of it and told the state, hey, you take care of it. So I don't know what the end result of that was. And I do remember that in early 2000, around 2006 or so, there was, and you could find it online, open source. It was put out by, I don't remember if it was the FBI or DHS or who, and it talked all about Jamaat al-Fuqra. and the problems and concerns. That was 2006. So
Yeah.
they're still here, but I haven't heard anything about them. But if you think, well, just because the feds, if the feds are not worried, we shouldn't be worried. Well, let's not forget a lot of the things the feds have overlooked. Let's not forget
Yeah.
Major Hassan at Fort Hood killed all of those fellow soldiers, and the only concern of our government at the time seemed to be if this would negatively affect our recruiting of Arab speakers. So we're on our own. It should be pretty obvious we're on our own. So you have to know who's around you, what different groups, what their ideologies are, because we can't look to the government to protect us. And the more we know, the better off we are. Is how I see it.
And I think especially now with our open border, I think it's really kind of an imperative that we understand who is coming across, who might end up being your neighbor, who is building a business in your backyard or running a business. There's a lot of things connected to a lot of these organizations. They run a lot of little convenience stores. There's just a lot there. And so for us to be ignorant of that, willfully ignorant of that, because we don't want to offend anybody, is offensive to me, and I'm sure to you, because we've had our share of problems with Islamists. I'm not saying that every Muslim is bad. I always, my answer to whether or not they're a radical or not is, do they believe in Sharia law? Is Sharia better than the Constitution? If they follow the Prophet Muhammad, those are two things that, I ask and that I consider to be fair questions to someone who's, in my backyard, basically. And if they do believe in Sharia law, that's a problem, because it is antithetical to our own foundation principles and our penal law, our civil law, and certainly our Constitution. So, those are things that we all should be paying attention to. But right now, with everything going on, with all sorts of things going on, people have so many other concerns. And so, that's why I do appreciate, getting the chance to talk and reminding people of what they should be looking for. Because I do think it's important that we know, who's coming into our neighborhoods and our communities. I think that's very important.
I would say, knowing and in Tennessee, as far as if you want to learn doctrine on this, then I would suggest Bill Warner. Not knocking what's on your side, of course, but your site focuses more on the organizations. But if you're looking at doctrine, anything from Bill Warner, we were fortunate to have him on the show a few months ago. But your site, if anybody is curious about the overall situation with the Islamists in Tennessee, your site is the best one for them. Now, it goes back several years. So, dailyrollcall.com, that's the site to go to. And it's not strictly just about Islam. There's other issues of importance on there. Legal immigration stuff is on there, and some other things. But if you want to know about the different groups in Tennessee, dailyrollcall.com is the best place to go for that, and especially how they're connected to some of our politicians. All right, that's the best place to go. And so you didn't do anything for a while with Daily Roll Call, but you're getting engaged again. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've got a lot of things that are on my plate. So I probably will continue to get re-involved. I was off a couple of years, kind of lost touch with everything and everybody. But I think that it's a serious situation, and I think that it does warrant for us to get back involved in it. And so a few projects, coming up, specifically following some, people that are coming into Tennessee, organizations that are coming into Tennessee, and just kind of getting back on the horse and letting people know that, it's still here. It hasn't gone away. If anything, it's flourishing. and we're allowing it to flourish. And so, yeah, I guess I'm coming back.
Yeah. Now you have a
That's good or bad.
You have a podcast, and now I think you mentioned that your most recent podcast was a little bit different, and you've done a few. So it's not all just this topic. Do you want to talk? You want to talk anything about the podcast, or some things that maybe you plan to do with your podcast in the near future?
Yeah, the podcast, as always, I'm still in touch with Bill Warner. He has been a mentor and a dear friend. And so, still working with him and thinking about how I will incorporate him into doing a podcast. But there's all kinds of things. And you even said it on the Daily Roll Call website. It goes back quite a way. So all you have to do is go into search and put in whatever you want to search. And if there's an article there on it, there's other authors. I believe you've, written some articles for my website. And so, and you're a very vital part of, what we do. You're, I hate to tell you this, but you're still in the game with us. So,
Well, thank you.
There's still the active group of folks that, we've all learned from each other and we've all grown together. And those are the relationships I'll be reaching out again to reinvest in. But the website does have a lot of interesting things. If you put in Sharia law, put in anything, you can search it. And so the podcast, there's a lot of different things. There's things about Black Lives Matter. There's political things. There's some rants on there. So yeah, there's a lot of different things to listen to in the podcast. And we will be getting more into the different groups that we've talked about tonight. We'll be doing more podcasts on that coming up too.
Yeah.
So a lot coming up.
And one thing, and we haven't really talked about it in this context, Memphis is almost, Memphis is a problem unto itself in a lot of things, but the Kuwaiti, there's a big Kuwaiti presence in Memphis. And of course, me and you have a mutual friend that knows a lot more about that than either one of us, but you might remember a little more. Is there anything you want to hit on? Not Kuwaitis, the Qatar. That there's the Qatar link to Memphis. Is there anything that you can tell us about that you recall right off the top? Because I know that we've got issues there with that, and then of course Knoxville is not left out either. But if you talk about Memphis just a little bit.
Well, in Memphis, there's the Qatar Foundation. There's some different organizations that another party that works with us that is involved in quite a bit. But like you said before, the Jerusalem Fund, I'm still figuring out, Dave, what's going on in the different cities. Actually, Chattanooga is becoming a player with illegal refugees and, illegals and things like that. So my own area, my own county is becoming loaded with this problem as well. So we'll be back in touch with our guy out in Memphis and start to rehash some of that. He is brilliant and he does have some really good information on this stuff. So that will be, coming soon too. So we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. You see yourself.
So your eyes better get better.
Yeah. Do you see yourself going back out on the road and giving classes again, or giving, talking to the different groups?
I'm not sure yet. I have no reason not to at this point. I'm not sure. That is something I probably will consider more locally for right now rather than across the state.
Right.
But in time that may come back. Yeah. I still enjoy talking, to groups. That was something that you and I, we both did across the state for a long time. So yeah, that's something I'd really like to get back into the law enforcement, teaching law enforcement. They need it.
Yeah. If you can find any that are willing. I don't know that there's a lot that are willing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's unfortunate, but it's not their fault. They're not really allowed to, listen to this stuff anymore, but in a way there are ways to get information to them, and I think it's really important that they need to learn some of the things that we know that's going on in neighborhoods too. So yeah, there's a lot to be done, and I guess I'm going to be doing it.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for all you do. Thanks for coming back on. Definitely have you back on in the future, and look forward to working with you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
I want to thank you all
Thanks.
for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, as well as notification bell so you never miss the show. Tennessee Informer is also available to listen to as a podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, and other popular podcast platforms. You can find links to them on our website, tninformer.com. While you're there, take a moment to sign up for our weekly newsletter to stay up to date on what's upcoming shows and topics. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. Just search for our username @TNInformer and share us with your friends. Join us tomorrow night, June 4th, when our guest will be State Senate candidate for the 24th District, Charles Cooper, who is challenging establishment incumbent John Stevens. I hope to see you then. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.
I don't know. I just felt like, blah. I don't know.
We covered some good